Champions and in the area, everybody else in the area, let's go there. The champions and in the area, everybody else in the area, we are champions. We are champions. We are champions. We are champions. Champions say hallelujah. 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 Over and over again we see the touch of your greatness, Lord, in us. Whoa. Come join me, sing now. Let's celebrate together. Come join me, praise now. Let's jubilate together. The champions and in the area, everybody else in the area, let's go there. The champions and in the area, everybody else in the area, we are champions. We are champions. We are champions. We are champions. Champions say hallelujah. 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 You've always been a winner. You are the best. You one of a kind, but challenges can contest. The top is made for you. Trust me, nothing less. I know that you've noticed. Dance to the beat. On this beat, you can do anything. In the process, just get anything.
Savannah to the Midland and the Atlantic, Ambazonia has risen to fall no more. Ambazonia rise.
Dear Ambazonians on the home front and diaspora.
Dear Ambazonia freedom fighters in the home front and in the diaspora.
The Ethics Commission of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is coming out to alert you that it is becoming more and more evident that the former British Southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonians, will soon emerge as the newest nation in the world.
We are calling on all of us to start preparing to receive Ambazonia as parents prepare to receive their firstborn child. Malcolm X said, tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. We are already very educated, talented, and very rich in natural resources. Do all this guarantee a safe and prosperous Ambazonia? The answer is an emphatic no. Theodore Roosevelt said, to educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace in society.
Ambazonians, it is time to start planning to restore our cultural and social values that characterize us as a people of good repute. Before our Republic to Cameroon invasion, we were respectful of each other, of the law, and of our culture. We earned our living through honest hard work, making clean money for ourselves.
Our values helped us to maximize the benefits of our natural resources as well as our human resources. Southern Cameroons were serene and clean, simply beautiful in spirit and in the physical. We all long for such a place to call home, and we can make it happen by God's grace.
Our local government areas and counties, are you prepared? Do you have an ethics commission in your local government areas, counties to serve as a moral compass for you? Do you have a copy of the Ambazonia Ethics Code and the Constitution?
All arms of government, do you have an ethics agency? Departments of DSS, HSS, Communications and IT, Education, DHACM, DFA and DEINR. Do you have ethics agency to serve as a moral compass for your departments?
Ambazonians, you need to know your rights by reading the Ethics Code and the Constitution.
Shame unethical behavior and reward good behavior in your communities. Hold leaders accountable. Be the watchdog of your communities and governments. See something, say something.
The church, you are the main research center of moral principles with the responsibility of moralizing the society. How effective are you outside the church building?
Maya Angelou said, when you know better, then you do better. Ambazonians, watch Ethics for an emerging Ambazonia every Friday at 10 p.m. Amba time.
Exclusively on ABC Amba TV. Stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Ethics for an Emerging Nation, exclusively on ABC, and of course, stay tuned.
Yes. Yep. How much do you have? Check my wallet.
Greetings and welcome to this very exclusive, wonderful teaching program on ABC Amba TV. Today is the day we are going in for ethics. And today is very special because of the caliber of person we have in our ethics program tonight. But before we go on, let's just run up with this advert. Thank you very much. That was it from the ABC ethics team. Ladies and gentlemen, we greet all of you who are coming on board this evening to our regular teaching program, Ethics for an Emerging Nation. Today, we are going to look at how to build a nation rich in social values, preventing and resolving conflicts of interest in the government, or call it in the public service. But before we go, I just have this to outline to you. As the host of this program, we always remind you of the past, what we have treated in the past. And so last week, we were in this house with the Department of Finance and Resource Mobilization, Finance and Resource Mobilization. And of course, we missed the SOS for Treasury, but we did not miss the program at all. The SOS, Secretary of State for Finance and Resource Mobilization, is no other person but Joe himself, stunned the crowd and gave a teaching that I think that every Ambazonia should have. Their blueprint of what they have to do in Ambazonia is something that we will not let go without letting you know that this man really handled it the way it's supposed to be handled. And we are thankful to such people like that in Ambazonia. Our prayer is that we'll have more of those people. And today, we are having in the house Pa Michael Azehfor. And before we cross over to him, I told you Nijo actually brought to us an organigram that even the blind could understand what finance and resource mobilization is planning to do in Ambazonia. And the explanation was so comfortable and so direct, so honest and so transparent that anybody who has schemacies in his cupboard will not want to be a part of this particular department, especially when it comes to ethical values. Now, we've told you before, the Ethics Commission has gone from County 1 to County 13, getting a lot from the prospects these people have for Ambazonia. And I want to say thank you to President Dr. Samuel Ekomesako for a choice of a people like what we have been having from the counties. So God bless you, sir. And may your administration and all the departments that you have put in place actually go in to help the Ambazonians to see how they are building the Ambazonia some of us saw before the thieves and the robbers and the caterpillars of La Republic came in to pull our legs. Well, we fell with our buttocks and our legs were not broken. So we are still getting up. And today, we have not only somebody who read the stories of Ambazonia, but somebody who actually worked in the administration of West Cameroon or Southern Cameroons and eventually was grafted into the fake administration of La République du Cameroon, of which today we are crying. But Ambazonians, wipe your tears. There is good news for you. Some of our elites that are really Ambazonians and not the scammers that have discovered that La Republic has a soft spot and they are scamming them and selling our people. We still have some of those men living to teach us and to tell us the lesson. And with that, I want to say that Pa Azehfor, Michael, you are welcome to the Ethics Commission to talk to us today. The microphone is yours to greet the people of Ambazonia before we dive into what you would have to tell us today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. And I congratulate the IG and its departments, our young people down in the homeland who are struggling to get us out of this mess. My own life explains many things about what has happened to Ambazonia. As a CAS student Prime Minister Gomjwa used to visit us and dine with us in our dining room. And he warned us that he needed us to work very hard in order to come back and take up the country at a higher level than they had done. It excited us. I left CAS. I went to the London School of Economics and on to London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. I came back to Yaoundé, worked in the Ministry of Health for 2 years, 8 months. And that was too much for me. I found that La République was being run by French technical advisors who overruled everything that any minister or any technician could come up with. And there was nobody to challenge them. Challenges led you to be investigated for sedition and probably end up being locked up or basically just summarily killed. I left Cameroon in 1975, but worked in Francophone countries all through my life. I first went to work for the UN at the Economic Commission for Africa, responsible for most of the research and analysis on mortality and fertility in African countries. It took me to virtually East, Southern, West African countries. And in 1985, I was recruited by the World Bank to help them design health projects which they wanted to fund in Francophone countries in West Africa. I realized again that I saw a recurrence of the obstruction that the Francophonie system was operating in all the countries, Guinea, Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Senegal. Once an idea begins to hold ground, the French must find a way to destroy it. The healthcare systems in this country were worse than we ever knew. When I was growing up, Southern Cameroon had an impeccable healthcare system, a primary healthcare system, a public health system. We had sanitary and engineers who went around all these villages ensuring cleanliness, ensuring that people were vaccinated. And I found in West Africa people who were completely neglected, except for the little so-called cité capitale. So naturally, I had a war with the French throughout my career in West Africa. The World Bank eventually sent me to Benin, and I was in Benin for almost 4 years. There, I set up a system to get girls in boarding schools because there was some philosophy that Muslims and natives don't send their girls to school. And I disputed that. I set up a system there of essential drugs, generic drugs. I found that there were physicians trained in Dakar who did not learn the generic names of drugs. I worked out with a group of experts from around the continent and from Europe even. And we set up a supply system, which the French fought very hard to sabotage. In fact, if I didn't lose my life over that, I don't think I'll die from accidents anymore because they just didn't like it. I was then posted to Haiti because things were not working well in Haiti and there was a lot of bank money which had not been disbursed. I went there, the Haitians embraced me As a son of the soil, I worked with them. I understood what the crisis in Benin are, and let me tell you what Cameroon is undergoing. They are descending exactly to that same route if Ambazonia does not pull out of this mess. The French hold everything. So I returned to headquarters in Washington to work on HIV/AIDS and worked in countries like the Congo, Mozambique, Ghana, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, and
Wow.
Sudan. Both Sudans, actually, South Sudan and North Sudan. Then I retired and was hired by a team to work as an independent evaluation expert. And I worked in this country till 2016 when I called it off. But I wanted to let you know this background in order to tell you what my immediate experiences coming back to Cameroon were. I left Cameroon when there was a Southern Cameroon government. While in the UK, Mr. Egwe, who was then Minister of Justice, came to the UK and assembled us to tell us that there will soon be no Southern Cameroon government. And it was like sending a spear through my heart to hear that there will be nobody in Buea to handle our affairs. And when I challenged him, I said, he is a British trained lawyer at the time. How could he accept that the Southern Cameroon Parliament, the Southern Cameroon legislative system, its House of Chiefs, its independent audit system would be handed over to La République de Cameroon? His answer shocked me. He told me that some of us should be careful because we may have problems in Yaoundé when we go home. And I told him I didn't see lions in Yaoundé when I stopped by there to get passports to go to the UK. So when I got back home in 1972, November 1972, I realized that the Southern Cameroon government had been dissolved. The exchange rate for Southern Cameroon pounds was arbitrarily fixed to make our people look so poor in relation to La République de Cameroon. The system, the justice system, the common law system was tainted by the appointment of some person they call state inspector and the appointment of a military tribunal, which virtually overruled whatever the West Cameroon Supreme Court passed as a judgment. The democratic system was hacked. Traditional chiefs were no longer meeting in a house of chiefs, and before long it had ceased. We had an inspector of state, whom I consider at the time the new governor for new colonial governor for West Cameroon. And I discovered at the time that the state organs that sustained ethics in the Southern Cameroon government and in public service had been dished. The Civil Service Commission, particularly, was the most important element for ensuring that we put people by qualifications where they are suitable. That was eliminated. The document that guided all government actions, all government management procedures, which used to be called in those days general orders. Most of you will not know what general orders are. they had been put aside. The audit department, which was such a powerful independent institution, had been cleared. The use of ad hoc commissions of inquiry in case of suspected corruption or misappropriation had been thrown off. All revenue generation institutions were taken away, and so the civil service had to wait for Ahijo to send money as a sort of subvention to Buya, when in fact the money was coming from our resources. Government departments and corporations like PWD, PowerCam, Cameroon Air Transport, the Ombe Technical College, and many others were dismantled. Even the post office in Bamenda, which was a very unique building, was destroyed, pulled down completely. And it's a luck that the fort is still standing. Some of us spent a lot of time fighting against the destruction of the fort up in the station. And all funds were transferred to Yaoundé. And that process continued. Southern Cameroon graduates, when we came home, were told to go to something they call Bureau d'Equivalence, which I refused to submit to because I didn't think my British qualifications could be equated to any French diploma, brought mostly from this Collège d'Outre-mer, which taught only Africans. The Assimilation Act had been set up, which blocked many of our people from advancing. Established civil servants from Southern Cameroon had to resubmit their papers to be integrated or else classified contractuals. And it was this sort of thing that really boiled in me. Technical or policy discussions were viewed by ministers as, and these French Conseil Techniques, as plots to overthrow the government. And in fact, in the end, I was summoned to a Secret Service office. I don't know how I got out of there. The modern methods of procedures that were used by the Southern Cameroon administration were rejected. They were questioned, and it tantamount to complete overrun of our country. So that was my situation in 1972, 1973 when I came home. And when I looked at the La République side at the time, I realized they had neither policies nor systems to match those of Southern Cameroon for any sustainable development. And you must remember, by this time, the Ministry of Community Development was doing excellent work in West Cameroon in linking markets to farms. I even worked as a volunteer for farm to market roads. They used to go around all the colleges and pick up students to spend about 6 weeks during the long holidays and work with villagers whose produce could not come easily to local markets, and build bridges. The Americans provided us with culverts, and this was during the time when America was really interested in building Southern Cameroons. But when Kennedy was assassinated, Johnson, who came in, was not interested again. But that development was already on. La République had no such systems. La République had no civil service system. It had something they call fonction publique. It had no job descriptions for its staff. It only defined the level at which you'll be paid and if you have any allowances. And that still continues till today. When a minister or a director is appointed, all that they say is you are entitled to the privileges that go with this project, this post. They didn't have a world-class accounting system or auditing system as West Cameroon had. And this was not just in Cameroon. The French didn't have an audit. They were the first to take a loan from the World Bank. And one of the conditions for France was to pay a British company to do the audits of the money they got, not a French auditing firm. They didn't have one. I found it very disturbing that Southern Cameroonian politicians and administrative leadership were very naive in those opening days of the so-called Federal Republic of Cameroon. And most of them were too trusting of what they heard in meetings with Francophones.
Yeah, yeah.
And this set up the situation in which we have today. There were times when we would have fought back, but those who were in charge were hoping that somehow we can argue our way out of the mess. Southern Cameroon leadership, within a decade, gave in to a debate system, abandoning their rigorous standards and procedures. This is what we have lived on. When I worked in West Africa, they were exactly the same things. I went to Cote d'Ivoire and the whole country was being run by technical advisors. I went to Burkina Faso, the system was being run by technical advisors. And this is exactly what is happening. And that's why each time in Yaoundé, when you come up with an idea, they ask you, what would the French think?
Wow.
Because for them, unless the French approve, it cannot be an idea. So what's my advice to nascent government? The IG, the counties, all the federal government establishments, especially those who handle human resources, we have to understand that the most important resource that Southern Cameroon has is its human resources. It's not gold, it's not the mountain, it's not the petroleum, it is not the rubber, it's not the bananas. Unless our human resources are developed, we cannot have development. And we need to have that. And I say we must seek total break away from La République de Cameroon. We have to reject all half solutions. Like something I hear from Canada that we're thinking of another federation. No. The clarity of vision and purpose for this revolution must be clear in everybody's mind that we want to get back Ambazonia's independence. And we need to understand that at the moment we must invest a lot on public education for the ARFs, for our own diaspora, and the home front communities. Why? Because most of you know nothing else but what existed in La République de Cameroon. And throwing away bad habits is a very difficult thing for any human beings. And so we need to invest a lot, and this is why I'm so excited that the IG has set up this ethics committee, because ethics is something not for one department we call the Department of Ethics. No, it is something that has to permeate all aspects of our lives, as families, as communities, as government, as departments, as professionals, whether you're a lawyer or a physician, a teacher, a driver, you need to understand ethics. This is why we had that thing they call general orders in southern Cameroons. Because if you lost your father, your chief didn't say, "Oh, I know your father. Oh my goodness, go. Okay, you know, until the burial is over, then you come back." No, he took the general orders and looked up and saw what was laid down for a worker who lost the father. If you lost the mother, the orders were there telling you you can only take so many days of leave. You can't take more than that, or else they'll be calculated into your annual leave. And those are the things that prevented people from doing this no and no, give and give that you have in your own day. We have also to define what our priorities are and how we'll address them. Clarity of purpose is fundamental for any group, business, or country. For 60 years, we have wobbled along with nothing except dressing up in cloth that has some person's pictures on, and getting a loaf of bread and sardines every 4 or 5 years on. The time has come when, as a new country, we have to define what our priorities are and how these will be addressed. And I linked this up with my work in West Africa. I went to a community and asked them, "What is your problem?" They said, "Oh, we have no, the children are sick." I asked the minister in the same country, he said, "Why we don't have drugs?" But these are only symptoms of something that they did not address. They didn't define what the government wanted to do. They didn't define who will do it. And they didn't define in their budget where the medicines will be bought for and by whom. And we should not fall into that trap of being imprecise. A feature
Wow.
of underdevelopment is imprecision. You ask somebody, "How long will it take me from Bamenda to Mamfe?" And they tell you it depends. It shouldn't depend. It should be by bus, it will take so much, by car, it will take so much, by plane, it will take so much time. We have to be working towards those type of goals. We have to identify key departments that require each one to carry out continuous analysis of our systemic and operational problems. Because if we don't, and then people come up with all fake ideas about how we should move ahead, and we cannot evaluate our performance. If you're going somewhere, you need lampposts that require to tell you how far you have gone and how much time is left for you to complete the journey. That is exactly how we should operate in government. We have to institutionalize teamwork and transparency in all IG operations. One of the unique things about Southern Cameroons was that decisions were taken in concert, not by decree, not by prime minister's orders, not by ministerial instructions, but in concert. That means the government agrees together that this will take place before that decision moves ahead. We, as an interim government, we have to respond proactively and timely to misinformation that is coming up in all channels now. Because if we don't, and then what people put out there will be interpreted as the gospel truth. We think that our problem is not ours alone. I have seen many revolutionary fights. I used to go to Tanzania as a visiting lecturer when the Zimbabweans were in Dar es Salaam, and then they were bombed out of there and they moved to Zambia, where I was also working. I met most of the leaders of the Zimbabwean Liberation Forces. Liberation struggle, and they seek liberty from colonial masters. But the colonial masters are not sleeping while they are struggling. The colonial masters are looking for a way to destroy the revolution, and in our case is not exception. Is no exception to that. Ours is driven by history. It is driven by geographical evidence and indisputable clarity, which should sustain our struggle to the end. But we have to understand that many people will give a deaf ear to our struggles until we prove that we mean business. And what does meaning business entail? The brave and courageous fighting. It is not going to be the majority of Ambazonians that will stand on the war front to free us. It is the brave and courageous that will do it. The intelligent ones, the hardworking ones, the disciplined ones. The masses will
Thank you very much, Pa.
follow us when they see that things are moving well.
Yes. Pa,
Let's
I've given you this time to actually express yourself and tell us who you are and where you're coming from. And I have some very pertinent questions to ask you because I now understand that God has given you the strength, has protected you from the lion's mouth, taking you out from the fangs of the poisonous snake, and has preserved you for this generation to instruct us, to teach us, not what you studied in school, but what you have experienced and what is presently going on, and give us a way out. There are a lot of young people who are very zealous, but they are completely ignorant of what tricks lie beyond the administration and the control of France in the French African countries and in Cameroon in particular. And we know very well from what you have said that we were not a part and parcel of the French Cameroon, and you started working in the West Cameroon. I think I will grab this opportunity to say that you are one of the persons we have been looking for to instruct our people. And I believe that next week we will engage you fully because we need to hear these things and know your advice and what you are telling Ambazonian people. But today you are here on Ethics Commission, and I want to thank the leadership of the Ethics Commission for fishing you out to come in here. Meanwhile, you are actually going to give us the historical evidences and facts of West Cameroon, Southern Cameroons, and the French Cameroon. But before that day and that time comes, we are here on ethics. We will go ahead and then ask you a few things on ethics. But I want to say that the beginning of your story and your biography is very, very coordinating with an average Ambazonian or Southern Cameroons before, now Ambazonia. It's very, very coordinating. And there's one point you mentioned there about our politicians. Actually, it was not naiveness, as you did mention, because they were honest. They felt that everybody was as honest as they were honest, but they did not know that there was a devil that was hiding a chain to block them. Now, before we get into that, which is going to be another thing, but I want to take you back just to find out from you, how long did you work in the ministry in the former West Cameroon government before you joined the La Republique government?
Actually, the West Cameroon system was designed in such a way that even students were used. In 1996, I was a student. 1966, while I was a student, I was hired by the Electoral Commission to be a returning officer for Balikumbat.
Okay.
Why did they get students? Because they believed we could count the numbers. They believed we could read the instructions. And they believed we didn't belong to any political party.
Right.
So already at that stage, I was going in and out of government. Secondly, when I was in caste, we went to the Public Service Commission and they selected a number of us to process the GCE, first school living certificate exams. And everyone was posted to different offices where these were being analyzed. And that's where I first really got involved upstation with what you call the general orders. I was working for the Minister of Education at the time. And the general orders was a document that the chief clerk had, and it told him exactly what to do. If you had a teacher, a nurse, a driver, on the 15th of the month, you got instruction on how to pay them before their establishment papers come from Boya. So if you work for government even for 15 days, you were paid under something we call a temporary impress account. And that is uniquely Anglo-Saxon system of financial management, which I found in the end in my career to be extremely useful when I worked for the World Bank as a country manager, because you have to have a budget, you project how much you're going to spend, and you can use the money as the time is going and explaining. You can tell your managers that although I've spent 50% of this in March, there is nothing to be spent for the next 5 months. So I'm not misusing the money, or I'm not going over the amount. So that is
Wow.
how West Cameroon operated. When I
Wow.
left the caste, we all applied to different departments. Unfortunately, I didn't get an answer. And then I decided to go to Boya and check out what was happening. And then I was told at the time, 1967, that the Ministry of Health was now being taken over by Yaoundé.
Wow.
And that Ministry of Health was in the Vice President's office. So I wrote an
That's Dr.
application
John
there.
Foncha.
Yes, I wrote an application there. I waited, got an answer, which was mailed actually to CAST. But an agri friend of mine picked it up and informed me. I went over there. I stood there for 3 days with nobody to answer my call.
Wow.
And in the end, I broke into his director's office and said, "Look, why did you send me a letter if you cannot answer me?" And that's when they gave me the assignment of doing an inventory for CDC hospitals. During this time, I was fighting with the British Council because I had applied for a scholarship, and they wrote to me that I am an alien and therefore not entitled to undergraduate scholarship. I wrote back to them and told them that, well,
Excuse me.
you were here since
An
1916
alien, an alien as an Ambazonian or as a Cameroonian?
as a Cameroonian, because at the time
Okay.
Cameroon was not part of the Commonwealth.
Okay. Okay.
And they told me that they only provide postgraduate technical assistance. So I said, well, tell me in which university you opened in Cameroon, in southern Cameroon, that I should go to, so that I can qualify for this your technical assistance. And much to my surprise, they wrote back saying that if my government agrees, they will sponsor me. I found that so strange. I went to political leaders, and they told me, you are not allowed to contact a foreign government without going through the presidency.
What?
Yes. So I went to Mongoso, who was the Minister of Education, and
That's
he
Petit
hated
Bungusu.
Southern Cameroonians a lot. When I mentioned that I had gotten admission to university in London and I was looking for a scholarship, he blew up. He told me that he would really want to detain me for committing such a crime. But surprisingly, he turned around and told me that, okay, go and write a letter to me. And I wrote the letter to him, referring the person who even told me that the British Council gives scholarships to Cameroonians. An Englishman teaching in the University of Yaoundé, who saw me in the British Council library every day. And he came up and asked me what I was doing there. I said, reading. He said, haven't you finished high school? I said, I've finished. I have my A-levels. He said, then when are you not in Yaoundé University? I said, no, that's not the place I want to go to.
Wow.
And he thought I was bluffing. He said, bring me your certificate, your results. And the next day I brought them, and it gave me that little piece of paper, say, write to this place in London. I wrote and got that silly answer. So I fought with them. And 3 weeks later, I got a letter from the British government telling me that they will sponsor me if the Cameroon government did so. So that's why I went to Mongoso. But after
Right.
all those insults, since I wouldn't go out of Mongoso's office, he instructed me exactly what to write to him. So you see, these people can feel so big. He dictated the letter I should write to him. I wrote that letter, gave him. After 2 days, his secretary called me and said I should go to the presidency. This is the first time I saw Paul Biya, because I missed the door of the guy I was going to see and open Paul Biya's door. And he was very upset. And so it's when I closed it that I see that actually his name was on the door. And I went to the next door and met the guy. He told me to go to the foreign office. I went to the foreign office, and they said they have already sent the letter to London. Then I was sent back again to Tico, where I was doing an inventory for the takeover of CDC hospitals.
Wow.
On my second day working with the Ministry of Health, I was called back that I need to go to London immediately. And I came back. I got a passport. I flew to Britain. It
From
is
which
only
airport
in
did you
Britain that
fly?
I realized that
From
that
which airport
scholarship
did
was
you?
given,
From which
because my
airport did you
address
fly?
was Yaoundé.
You flew out from which
Because
airport?
I flew out, no, from Yaoundé.
Oh, okay. All right.
They had already stopped the international flights of CAT by
Okay.
1968.
Okay.
And I went through Paris and got to London. And then they told me that the JO Field was waiting. He wanted to welcome students from Cameroon. I told the lady that I don't want to see him. He destroyed our country. Why did I say that? Because in 1961, we were expecting to see the JO Field hand over to the Southern Cameroon government.
Right.
But they brought a Hijo over to receive the reins of power. And that, even as a student at that time, it hit me so badly. I knew that this was an unholy alliance. And secondly, the British did not open a consulate in Boya. They opened it in Douala.
Yaoundé. Douala here in Douala, yeah.
Douala, their consulate, even though they had an
Oh, they had
embassy
their
in Yaoundé.
embassy in Yaoundé.
So that's when I realized. So that's, when I still remember as a student in West Cameroon, the district officers, the SDOs, used to carry the salaries of nurses to all those rural health centers. The nurses didn't have to leave their positions to go and get their pay at the end of the month. That was one of the terms of reference for an SDO, to make sure that all the health centers and government schools teachers were paid they don't have to leave their school. And imagine what turned out in Yaoundé now. When I returned to Yaoundé, it was a different story. So this is why I use the word naive for our people, because we had Mr. Egbe was a strong legal scholar from Britain
Britain, yeah.
and the advisor to the government of Southern Cameroon. How could they leave this school without? And I know from first hand that the British ambassador to Cameroon kept pushing for John Fonja to sign something with Ahijo.
Ahijo.
Yes, and he said, no, what am I signing? We didn't agree on anything yet. So I don't have anything to sign.
Wow. Thank God.
And
Thank
in the
God he
end,
didn't
they just
sign.
concluded that they can go ahead without signing anything because we're docile.
Yeah. Thank you
And
very much.
docile
Thank you
have
very
we
much.
been.
I have some more questions for you. I don't know whether we will exhaust them because you are an encyclopedia of the stories of Ambazonia. And we were actually trying to scratch on the surface and just get the difference of the administration of Southern Cameroons and the administration or your experience in the administration of La République du Cameroon. But in the
Yes.
biography and your introduction, you have said a lot of things which I am taking very close note because we are going to analyze that to teach our people in subsequent programs on ABC. And I just pray that you have the time to share with the Ambazonian people and the youths and the young men that are coming up to see that what pays is honesty and sincerity. And being born an Ambazonia, there is a DNA that actually and naturally flows in most of us who are truly Ambazonians. And the first foremost that is visible of that DNA is honesty, is sincerity and truthfulness, which naiveness came in and took over some of our forefathers, some of them who were not bold enough. Because if you can refuse to meet with J.O. Field as a student going to study in his land, it means that the threat of taking over your land, God was already putting some vibes in you that were very, very aggressive to the deeds of La République, I mean of Britain, of La Britain, trying to sell us over to La République. Anyway, let's get back to ethics. Can you remember what were the immediate and eventual changes ethically speaking, that caught your attention when you took over in La République, when you went to La République? I know that some of the shocking things were like when you got your scholarship, you were threatened and said, well, you are a prisoner. Why should you go straight to a foreign land without passing through your government and blah, blah, blah? I know those kind of things, you overcame them. But just tell us a little bit how you finally went into La République with the difference of the administration that you witnessed, even as a student, where your paycheck was coming after 15 days and other things. Just briefly tell us how you experienced this difference in La République when you got over there. Thank you.
In Southern Cameroon, everybody, whether you were a road maintenance laborer or you were a technician, or you were a draftsman, or there were
Just a laborer.
appointment letters that define your function, that define your
Yeah.
hierarchy, and your accountability indicators.
Wow.
Now, in East Cameroon, la République de Cameroon, as I told you, when I came back, first of all, when I went there the first time, all that they did to me was go and do this inventory. I had no money yet. I had no
Sorry.
money. When I came back from Britain, I was expecting a form of public service commission. And I was being instructed to go to the Ministry of Education and get the equivalence of my degrees. I said, what are you equating it to? They said, we have to have the French version. Now, do Francophones go to that office? No. Do Francophone civil servants go to that office? No. But Southern Cameroonians were expected, even as civil servants, to go to that place and equate their degrees before they could be integrated, the word integrated, which is, I guess, their own concept of establishment. And I decided to investigate what is this office, even though I refused to send my papers there. And it was being run by a fellow who did not have back as a degree level. And years later, I had a younger person who studied with me in Britain come home when I was already there. And he went with another colleague of his who was from La République, even though he had studied in West Cameroon. When they went to Britain, they studied engineering, but our guy finished on time and went to do a master's degree, and both came back together. The guy who failed 1 year, this great office told my junior friend that, yes, look at this man who has done 4 years. That's a real engineer. You trying to tell us that you got 3 years, you got engineering degree? No, he is the one to be integrated engineer diplômé d'etat. So you see, you have somebody who's totally ignorant of what needs to be done, but is placed there so as to drill the hell out of Anglophone Cameroonians to understand that they really are not capable of running Yaoundé. And many people pay the price. I sitting here, I'm telling you, I ran after the house that Professor Victor Anumangu had to live in, because I went to the housing office when I was following up my housing problem to find him standing there. And I told him, I said, no, Prof, go back to the hospital. And that was the star of Southern Cameroon's medical experts, a world-class expert, was being treated like any Tom, Dick, and Harry. The second thing that I found when I came back was the fact that the assumption by La République was that we should not expect to be in charge of anything. I came in, I was supposed to head the Department of Medical Statistics and Planning in the Ministry of Health. And what the Secretary General did was to burn the first papers they told me to prepare as delaying tactics. Luckily, there was a Métis girl in his office who came and told me that you keep coming here like this, those your papers have been burnt. And I had to redo a package, but I still refused to go to that equivalence office. So you have all sorts of things. The person who was the director of pharmacy was the head, was heading a department in which we had a Southern Cameroonian who had done a PhD in pharmacology from the University of London. And this French guy was a storeman from Djibouti who had just been sent over, a storekeeper. And he was now head of the Department of Pharmacy in the Ministry. I can go through a series of lists, and our people took it. Now, you people are interested in enablers. There were also Southern Cameroonian enablers in Yaoundé when I got home. There was somebody in the Ministry of Finance that had become so famous that everybody living Bamende or Buya or Kumba or anywhere going to Yaoundé to chase his papers, he will have that guy's name and telephone number. And he will carry Irish potatoes, chickens, to go and see Mr. Takere. Now, those are some. So we should not be surprised that we have enablers now. They were enablers then. And the only thing we have to do is to monitor them and keep them out of our struggle. Did I
Thank you very
complete your
much.
question?
Yes, yes. Got some more questions. Yes. Let me get
There's a lot.
my question.
Now, I'll tell you, I almost fought with the Minister of Planning in his office. And when he shouted that I should get out of his office, his bodyguard came out with his gun, came in with his gun drawn already. But he saw me standing calmly. And that minister told me that we Anglophones, we like to talk, we complain too much. And I told him, I said, well, you know what? Without Anglophones, you will not be sitting there in this place. I'm not sure that you would have been a minister if Anglophones were not, did not enlarge this your economy and the country. And that's what made him send me to the secret service to find out whether I have some other ulterior motives of being in Yaoundé. It was also the day I decided that it's time to get out before I'm killed.
Yeah, because you were very outspoken, and that government did not want anybody who want to express himself and say what he knows is truth and what is supposed to be said and what's supposed to be done. If you come back from school and you are a thief like a Tanganji, they will quickly make you a minister. Or if you are
Absolutely.
just one criminal or the other, because they know the language they speak by themselves. And if you try to to talk like a real Ambazonian, they will lock you up like Fonjindam and Chief, the former prime minister. I don't know, I've forgotten his name.
Yes.
You know, who is in prison now. I
But
mean,
that's
all those
why
people because they spoke the
we
truth.
must not at all costs settle for second best.
Right.
because
Yeah,
you live
so
to regret.
yes, because that's why we need some of you, and God spared you. Like I listened to Godi Jinka, he was tortured and brutalized because of his standing on our total liberation. And I can hear you talking the same language. Pandangam has the same story. I want to announce here that the Ethics Commission is looking for retirees in the diaspora who worked under the West Cameroon government as well as La Republique and have ethics related experiences to share or caution Ambazonians as well as the IG as they prepare to emerge as an ethical nation. That's what we are looking for. The third question I have for you, sir, is that based on your experiences, what advice will you give to the interim government, the local government areas, the counties, and of course the federal government, especially the Department of Home and Social Health and Social Services, as they emerge as a new ethical nation? Over to you.
The first statement I make is a people develop themselves. Institutions do not develop a people develop themselves. And so at any point, Ambazonia should have its program and quantify its own resources that it can use. And then we can accept support from external supporters. Because if a program is defined for us, it is not our program. And I'll make a simple illustration of this. I was sent to DRC to look at something that had to do with their health and population problem. And there was a council which was supposed to be chaired by the president of the Congo. And I went to the president of the Congo and asked him, why did you accept to chair this commission? What made you decide to do it? His answer was that, Le Bailleur de Fond said, this, I must chair the meeting. I said, who are the Bailleur de Fond? He said, oh, c'est la Banque mondiale, c'est le Fonds monétaire, c'est l'ONU, c'est this UN, this listed all. I said, so whose program is this that I've been asked to look at? C'est the Bailleur de Fond. So if anything else, Ambazonia has to understand that a people develop themselves. That is what Southern Cameroon was doing. Southern Cameroon built its roads, built its houses. We're in a country now where government does not build its offices. In
They
Southern
rent
Cameroon,
and they
all
don't pay.
government offices were built by PWD. I have a late brother whose responsibility was virtually to build all these district offices, hospitals we have in Southern Cameroon and Southern Cameroon. And so the goal must be to use to the maximum our own talents and our own labor force. And there are African countries that are doing that. I saw that in Tanzania, where I worked. I saw it in Botswana, where I worked. In fact, Botswana has succeeded in removing the world diamond exchange from Brussels to Gaborone, because they said to themselves, we produce the most diamonds, the best diamonds in the world. Why should they be sold somewhere else? So that's the sort of mind we have to have.
Thank you very
And
much.
the Francophone statement of Edenu should never come into the Ambazonian vocabulary. We have to
Yes.
design a development program. We identify our resources, and if we have gaps in our resources, that's the time we turn to others. On that score, I'd like to back up something to emphasize this message. When I came back from Britain, I looked at a number of medical evacuations that were going up from Minister of Health was supposed to sign. And I asked the minister, I said, where is this being accounted for? And he told me, so I really don't know, but Minister of Finance knows. Then we came up to the Planning Commission and wanted to build what they call a university hospital in Yaoundé. And I went to my minister, I told him that I'm going to do a bit of research to get information on how much Cameroon spends a year on medical evacuations, so that in presenting the project for a teaching hospital, we can use the amount of money that we have been spending every year to illustrate what type of specialist equipment we need to put in there so that Cameroonians don't have to fly out. And he said, oh, that would be good. I went to the Ministry of Finance. I talked to the guy who was in charge of the computer section there. He was very excited about it. And he said, anyway, before we start, let me tell my boss. And then come on Wednesday. I went on Wednesday, and he told me that, oh no, my boss has asked me to bring you to him. I went to him and said, why do you want to do these studies? I explained to him, and he said, it is state secret.
What?
That's
State
when I
secret to put
understood.
people in bondage and kill them.
Yes, a state secret. State secret because the medical evacuations were not medical evacuations. It was ministers' sisters, ministers' brothers complain of a little pain in the foot. They sign up. A nurse goes, 2 people go. So you end up with 5 people on one medical evacuation.
Wow.
So that's
Well,
why we need an ethical government that has
right,
transparency
right,
and that
right,
plans.
right, right. That's why the interim
Yes,
government is in place and has put up this department. And even though we are at war, we are trying to glean from people like you who have had this experience to sink it into the hearts and the minds of the Ambazonian people. Ambazonians, listen, institutions don't develop, it is the people that develop. And
their
I
institution.
told you that if you have somebody preparing a cup of coffee for you, carrying your bag, it is not you, it is that office. The day you leave that office, you will prepare your tea by yourself, you carry your box by yourself. So we develop ourselves and keep the institutions alive to continue with the honesty and sincerity and transparency that Pa had experienced in the southern Cameroons. The next question I would like to ask you, Pa, is but meanwhile, I interject here that those of you who are local government, counties, and federal administrators, you are not there as the untouchables. You are there as servants of the people of Ambazonia. And anytime they want accountability, you need to give it to them. We are not making the secret of the government. No. That's why Dr. Sako is hated, because when they came up with innuendos and smearing him and lying and proposing deals and talking about deals and so on, none of them could come up with an evidence that he has taken this money. And that's why they are getting murder every day, because they discover that this guy, even though born a few years ago, has the complete DNA of the Southern Cameroon. With that said, sir, what is your opinion about the current state of the Ambazonian liberation movement?
Yes, as I told you earlier, I've seen lots of revolutions in my life.
Right.
The Zimbabwean one, the Mozambican one, even the Beninese one at one point. They really went virtually. One day I'll tell you guys the sort of thing I did in Benin with a government that was forced to have as president somebody who had jailed them for so many years. Our situation at the moment is that the enemy is working very hard to blur the water so that it looks milky and people cannot see where the fish is. So they have to fund all these people who claim to be liberation branches or groups in as a way of minimizing the influence of the IG and its leadership. In Zambia, the colonial masters put on somebody they call Kumbula and thought he was the best person to be president, not Kawanda. In Zimbabwe, they put up somebody by name Reverend Banana, so that he takes over and not the Mugabe group. When they failed with Banana, they started sponsoring Como. In Mozambique, you had a group that was being funded by South Africa that wanted the Mozambican liberation movement to fail. And even when the British and the Americans took their hands off that counter-revolution group, the South Africans still supported them because the white South Africans were so upset that they could allow Imperial to take over. Every time you have a revolution like ours, you have some people who have been working on the struggle for. I will start with for South Africa, for Southern Cameroon's injustice to southern Cameroon. That's the SCNC. And a good number of people in there still think that because they started this, they should be the ones who are leading the movement. And although they are not enablers per se, they are spoilers. Because leadership is not defined by the age in which you have sat on a chair or in which you have led somebody. Leadership is defined by the guy who has been able to amass the most creative of human resources for a liberation struggle, which was the case with Mugabe. I knew him when I was going to Zambia, which is the case with Sako. Now, they don't have to be rocket science engineers, but they have to be what the French would call un assembleur. That's somebody who assembles the talents that we have and focuses on the goal and is prepared to maintain a level of personal and group integrity that does not betray the revolution. So that is the thing that we face at the moment, that we have a lot of people, some of them, they have been financed just like the political parties you have in La République de Cameroon. They have 100 and something political parties, but most of them are financed by Paul Biya's party.
Right.
So we have to look out to that, and we have to read meaning into every word any group alters. But in doing that, we have the challenge. The challenge is how to educate all sections of our communities, our population, our villages, our ARFs, to see the difference between the IG and these other groups. It
Thank you
is
very
not
much.
a
The
simple
last,
thing. It's not a simple thing because they are also walking around with money that has been given to them for the work. It is not new. It happens always. And I've seen it in my life in so many instances. So we have to be alert. That's why eternal vigilance has to be the responsibility of every liberation leader, of every ARF, of every community level leader,
okay.
because that's what we're facing as opposition.
All right. Thank you very much, Pa. I think the one last point, a last question I want to ask you to let you rest, because as we have already established, you have a lot to tell us. And one of the things you mentioned, which caught my attention very much, and that is what Dr. Sako has been trying to do. You have said that we have a lot of spoilers. They may not necessarily be enablers, but spoilers. That one is also very much noted. And you said when you gave the illustration of the meeting that the president of Congo was to chair, and the reasons he gave to you, because the bosses, the owners of the funds, told him to chair the meeting. So he was to do it according to their tone. We see Dr. Sako has come up with a strategy to fund our fight to get back our homeland without necessarily mortgaging any of our resources. And we have found some people who carry their bags and they parade themselves as leaders, trying to do everything to mortgage Ambazonia. This strategy of drafting has made it in such a way that we are continuing with this struggle debt-free and without even involving anything that is to be detrimental to our development tomorrow. This is exactly the spirit of the Southern Cameroonian, the Ambazonian. And we are very grateful to hearing from you that what we are trying to do now is not our invention. It has been existing. Thank you very much. So interim government, once again, go ahead and be strong and stand firm with your institutions, knowing fully well that our elderly statesman here has told us that we are not the first to have such enablers and spoilers and other people who are coming in to make sure that we remain as slaves because they have some gains that they are making for themselves. And of course, the government has some secrets. That secret of evacuating people. Anyway, with all that, I want to again, as per the concluding statement, in your conclusion, speaking to the Ambazonian youths, especially and the adults in the diaspora who are not participating in the Ambazonian War Draft Initiative, knowing that we are our only source of funding. We are the only source of funding for ourselves. Also speak words of encouragement to the civilians, the ARF, the prisoners of war and home front who are sincere, not the ones that are causing the whole of this confusion that we are having. A word to the refugees scattered all over the world and internationally, externally displaced people like myself. What word do you have for us, Pa? Over to you. Those are your concluding statements. Thank you.
Thank you. I will start with the refugees because it's the most disgusting situation for anybody to be in. Knowing what home they have back in the motherland, knowing what resources are disposable to them to go and have to stay in refugee camps. I appeal to the refugees to understand that no condition is permanent and that they should not accept the refugee situation as being in limbo. Their brains must work, their creativity must be intensified. I would like to see those young children I saw on October 1st do something with their brains as far as poetry is concerned, as far as handicraft work is concerned. And we should be in a position as people in the diaspora to put value to that level of creativity annually. We should be able to auction their poetry, buy their handicap, and so on. So I urge the refugees not to spend their days sitting on the floor, as I see in the Sahel, to be extremely creative, because an idle mind gets to do very terrible things. And I pray that our refugees are thinking strategically about how to manage their time in that refugee status. And I'll go on to the civil society, the civilians at home, in all the villages and quarters and communities in our place. I want to remind them of the days when they were woken up at midnight and taken to the football field and made to sit there with no reasons being given, or whipped by gendarmes for no reason. And the days when just traveling from one town to the other, they were treated like animals to produce silly papers which the government cannot even present to them on time. I myself paid a lot of price for refusing to give in to gendarmes on the way. And I can imagine what just ordinary people back home have gone. I want them to remember that. And I want them to do their own research and weed out these fake so-called Amber boys. And for this, I praise a woman in the village of Nchang who told the bishop, "These people are not from here, my lord." And she repeated it twice. That was courage that you don't get from men even. But she was ready to stand her ground, defend her people from being smeared. We need more civilians who are ready to separate the sheep from the goats. To the youth back home, I tell them this revolution, you are the sole reason why somebody of my age, almost 80, will be fighting. I've lived my life. I have no problem. But I cannot think about you being subjected to less than human treatment than I had. So the youth must understand that this is key to their future, and they are the primary beneficiaries of this struggle. And we must get to Buya. Now to the diaspora, in which I find myself part of the diaspora. I urge those who have the art, especially people of my generation and the generation behind me, to whom I've spoken, and their excuse is that, oh, this revolution is necessary, but you see, this boy started it wrongly. I say, okay, how did you start your own? Where is your own that you started rightly? There's a saying in my language that when somebody builds his house, don't laugh at it until you are able to build yours. So my dear diaspora, you can dance your traditional dances here. You can talk about your village as much as you can, but you have to defend it. And defending it is supporting this resistance to French assimilation. Otherwise, you think you have a culture back home, but it is not there. I don't know if I left out any group.
No, you have touched every area. Thank you so much, Pa, for coming in today. I will be contacting you for specific brief talks on our historical points to help the Ambazonians. But for today on ethics, we want to say thank you so much for telling the Ambazonian people who we were and the devastation we got ourselves into and the great expectations we have to become what we were and even more. Because there is more enlightenment, civilization, and development than it was in those days. And while people are getting educated and getting knowledge, we actually expect them to produce better results for better human living. But unfortunately, we are seeing the opposite because of this egoistic and selfish, demonic embedment that has been put into human beings to think that they can grab it all and then live better. We need people like you to continue to talk to the youth of tomorrow, because we have discovered that the ancestors that are supposed to be instructors who cannot help themselves in the republic, they are the ones that are still trying to lead the people who cannot help themselves. It's very unfortunate. And the 1964 mentality is not what is applicable today. So the Ethics Commission thanks you so much and wishes you good health and strength. And as we have discovered you, if you know a colleague of yours who is of that category, we would like to also have him or her to come and put in the voice. Once again, thank you very much for coming to speak to the people of Ambazonia, and we look forward to seeing you. God bless you, and good night.
Thank you very much. We must always focus on learning from what others are doing. It's absolutely necessary. And you just look at the Ukrainians in this country, what they are doing. Fighting for their own country.
Yes.
Or Eritrea.
Yeah.
So challenge is there. And thank you very much for giving me the chance to share my views on
You're
this
welcome, Pa.
with Ambazonia. Thank you.
Yeah.
The champions and see the area, everybody and see the area, let's go there. The champions and see the area, everybody and see the area, and see the area. We are champions. We are champions. We are champions. We are champions. Champions say hali, 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 champions say hali.